So where are we going? We going there or are we going?
I wasn't prepared.
Start talking. Talk. Say hi. No, you got to say it. You can't just use sign language. Do it.
Fine.
Good morning. Well, now I feel awkward because I'm not going to my spot and all that stuff.
I blame Vinny.
I do too. He should have set up a tall table and get the hell out of here with this.
What the heck is this?
Vincent.
Double action only, because they hardly exist anymore.
Well, it's true. Good morning. Good morning.
Wow, there's so much of you in the picture.
I know. We didn't need to do it this way today. So, for not Friday. I guess it was last week, Monday. I don't know. Whenever we did our last live, we were talking about something. Man, it's hard to. I have to hold the camera up higher because of the wideness and not the tallness. So it's weird. What were we talking about? We were talking about defensive ammo. You got to be in here. There's too much space by myself. We're talking about defensive ammo, and somebody had the question about. We were asking. We were. Let me get a leg workout while we're doing this. We were somehow. We had asked for if anybody had any other subjects they wanted to cover.
This is hilarious.
And somebody brought up action types. What the difference is between double action, single action, DASA, and all that stuff. And if there's a preference for concealed carry, I guess was the question.
Yeah, and law enforcement.
Or advantages, disadvantages, and so on. So, man, my legs are getting tired.
It's okay. I can find a stool.
You might need one. We are going to talk about a couple of those things and see if we can confuse you more or less.
How about we go over to the perch and bring the firearms over there?
Okay.
So you can set the thing down.
Okay. Well, I was going to say I could set the thing down there.
And angle it up.
I mean, we can try. I don't know.
Let's see.
This is a learning curve, and it is because of the landscape thing. It adds a little bit to the complexity. So first off, how do I swap? I'm using Elizabeth's phone, so I don't know. Is it that button? Mm-hmm. Boop. There you go. Whoa, wrong way. Okay.
The gimbal's not new.
Yeah, that's not new. Well, it was just I fat fingered it. So we have a couple of handguns here of different action types. We have I guess DASA. Yep. Single action only, striker fired, double action only.
Man, I should have brought my P250.
Yeah, you should have, but you failed us as usual.
We were going to do it this time.
So we are. Pardon my ineptitude with this stupid iPhone thing.
Hey, you can almost see.
That's
me.
a great shot. This is gonna be good. Hold on.
Let me get you that office chair down there.
Almost falled over. Okay. Now, that ain't gonna work. How are we gonna do this?
I don't know. I said go over to the perch.
Okay. Let's go. We're gonna go to the perch.
Okay.
See,
I'll
this
bring
is.
over the gun.
You bring over the guns. Pretty please.
I'll put one in my pocket.
Okay, because it's a pocket carry gun. Oh, and man, we have got a great class going on for that today. We have the advanced CCW class happening this morning. Uh-oh. I don't have a spot here. But in the advanced CCW class, we watch some videos of real use of force stuff, and we get to talk about them. And then we give you an opportunity to try to draw from all sorts of different positions. If you like to draw from your pocket or from a satchel, an Indiana Jones man purse, or whatever the heck it is that appendix or fanny packs, whatever you got, you can try to draw from that position in this class. There's no live fire, it's just all dry fire. but it's a humbling experience for sure. Brooke, good morning.
My dad?
Yep.
Hi, Dad.
What's my name? I'm going to ask him. I love the fact that we can do this in landscape. I really hate the comments. I can't see them. Jan, good morning.
You have to see them like really fast.
You have to see them fast because they disappear.
Wonder if there's
right
a setting.
quick like. Maybe. We'll have to comment sent with, I thought it was
Look, we can
telling
hit
us.
the X button.
What happens?
Boop. At least we get
We get
one
a little
more
bit
comment.
more. Yeah. So anyway, like I was saying, we had somebody ask about the differences or pros and cons of different types of actions.
They're behind you.
Okay, I will do the magic. Of
I
bringing
figured
everything
we'd just talk about one of them at a time. Good job. I'm so proud of you.
Made it. Certainly missing out. Oh, on comments? I'm sure I am. All right. So, what first?
Well, okay, so what is an action?
What is an action? Are
It's
you
where all
asking
the-
me?
That's where all the action happens. I mean, it is.
I just can't. Martin, good morning. It was a good morning until that comment. Anyway, so action, when we talk about actions of a handgun, you'll hear the term double action, single action, DASA, double action, single action, or striker fired. So the action typically talks about how many actions the trigger itself performs. That's it. So if it's a double action only, every time you pull the trigger does two things. If it's single action only, when you pull the trigger does one thing. It's super confusing, I know.
Well, it is usually made to be super confusing. It really changes maybe it has an additional lever on it or a safety, but it definitely changes the weight of the trigger pull, and that is the biggest change that most shooters recognize.
Yeah. So when we first of all, no ammunitions, empty gun. Okay. So when you look at double action, trigger does two things. Okay. So when I pull the trigger, it's going to add tension to the hammer and release it. Okay. So one trigger pull, two actions. It adds tension and releases tension. Okay. A single action only. I'm going to get these magazines all sorts of confused. Single action only, again, empty gun. The trigger can only perform one action. So now the hammer's already under tension. It's already in that rearward position. Vincent, what? Get off your phone. Do work. Single action only. The trigger only performs one action. So when I press the trigger, it will release spring tension on the hammer. Okay. Right now, while the hammer is in that forward position, the trigger does nothing. It cannot add the tension to the hammer. It can only release tension. But when the gun goes bang, the slide goes backwards, cocks the hammer in that rearward position. So again, when I press the trigger, it releases the hammer. So since this trigger does not have to add tension to the hammer, the trigger pull is much shorter, much lighter. It's easier to pull. I don't know what this is from the factory. We'll say 3-ish pounds or so. So it takes about 3 pounds of effort to make that hammer fall. All right. With a single action only, with a double action only firearm, that trigger pull might be 8 or 10 pounds, okay? And it takes a longer time to get through it. Now, this first gun that I showed is actually a DASA gun, double action, single action. So the very first time you pull the trigger, you have that long, heavy trigger pull. Gun goes bang, slide cycles, cocks the hammer in that rearward position. Now when I let go of the trigger and the trigger resets, I barely put any pressure on it and the hammer falls. Okay, so the first trigger pull is in double action. Any subsequent trigger pulls are in single action. Then when you decide you're done shooting, you can, on most guns, most DASA guns will have a decocking lever that I can push down on here, and it will safely drop the hammer. Okay. You do have some guns, which are usually little itty bitty guys, like this one, that are double action only. So every time you pull the trigger, you don't see an external hammer here, but inside of here, you can see the little flippy doodad. That's the hammer. That's inside of there. So when I pull the trigger, you see the little flippy doodad move, and in fall, gun would go bang, slide cycles, but it does not cock the hammer in that rearward position. Every time I pull the trigger, it is a very long and heavy trigger pull. And with a little bitty gun like this, that's much more difficult. All right? As you pull the trigger, you have to have a very steady, smooth trigger press in order to shoot the gun well, which is not easy with a little bitty gun. This is 380. So still snappy, short barrel, little bitty grip, hard to hold on to. Often misconstrued as an easier gun to shoot than this, because this is big and heavy. This is little bitty and light, so it's much easier to hold on to and control. And this shoots the gigantic 9mm cartridge. This shoots the little itty bitty 380 cartridge. So this one must be easier to shoot. That is not true. In 99.92% of all cases, this gun is going to be much harder to shoot than this one. Then, last, but certainly not least,
Goldilocks.
this,
What?
I like that.
Yeah.
Is a striker fired. So no external hammer. Its striker or firing pin is inside of the slide under spring tension. When I press the trigger, you can hear it release the spring tension, and the striker goes forward, striking the primer, igniting the gunpowder, sending the round down range. Now, once the trigger's back, it's dead. The slide does have to cycle in order to reset the trigger, but the trigger pull's much shorter and lighter than double action only, yet not as short and light as single action only. So
Goldilocks.
best of
So
both worlds.
it's not a hammer on a fulcrum on the back. It's all linear, like a pinball machine, like you're pulling back the little guy to hit the ball.
What's that called?
I don't know.
Me either. It's got to be called something.
Well,
Ask
Siri,
one of
but-
our super smart people out there will tell us what that is called. It's probably called like the hammer or something crazy in pinball world, because that would make this confusing.
Okay.
For
For sure.
I missed something in there.
Second, the doodad spelling.
Yeah, somebody must. These comments are. It's too hard to watch and see.
You said the doodad.
I know, but somebody must have spelled it incorrectly
Let
or
me scroll
correctly,
for you.
and
Let me scroll. Oh, is doodad hyphenated?
yeah, I don't know.
It's the pin in pinball. Oh,
Is it?
that makes sense. Thank you, Nick.
It's not a Live Strong. It's a Shadow Systems Foundation Series bracelet for
For a toddler.
Would this even fit on your wrist?
Oh, maybe. Let's see.
Anywho's, so yeah, like she said, this is kind of the best of both worlds. Not as long and heavy as the double action only.
No, I can't get it over my fist.
Not as long and heavy as the double action only. Not as short and light as single action only. Now, what's a disadvantage of a single action only pistol?
Safety.
What's
manual safety?
Okay, so that would be something I would consider a disadvantage when it comes to defensive use, is the fact that it has to have a manual safety, because the trigger pull is so short and so light, you have to have a manual safety. This particular gun has both a manual safety and a passive safety, meaning that to disengage this one, you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to make a decision to. This manual safety is like a light switch. You have to make a decision to turn the gun on or off, okay?
I always mess with my brain when you say turn the gun on or off. Turn the safety on or off.
Yeah, it is confusing. I say it that way because of a light switch. Because you turn light switches on or off. You turn your gun on or off.
The trigger turns the gun on.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Because safeties can fail.
Yes. The trigger actuates the gun. This allows it to be actuated. This turns it on. Anyway, it's only because I say it's like a light switch. That's the only reason I say it that way.
Okay.
But people get confused by that all the time when, safety's on or off is the safety is on, the gun is off. The safety is off, the gun is on. There you go.
Gun's always on.
God, would you shut up? Anyway, because the trigger pull is so short, so light, it has to have one of these. So that's a disadvantage, in my opinion, right? Because you can miss it, you can forget to turn it on or whatever. What I tell people for a manual safety on a defensive handgun is that you have to be able to actuate it with only your strong hand thumb, okay? So if it's a little bitty safety like this guy, if I can't turn the gun on or off, I can maybe get the gun to come on. Turn it off's not as big of a deal. Gosh dang. Okay? If you can't turn the gun on with only your strong hand thumb, it's not the right gun for you. And safeties like this make it really, really difficult.
Make me mad. All right, so there was a really important question that came up. We'll get it in a second. Just finish your train of thought. Sorry.
This has a safety you can actuate with one thumb. Go.
So if you drop a gun that has a safety, will it go off? I'll let you take this one.
Any gun you drop will go off if the trigger goes backwards.
Ooh.
Let's put it that way.
Or if it's designed with flaws. But guns are designed not to go off if they're dropped. Modern handguns are designed.
Yes.
The well-designed ones will not go off when they're dropped, even with or without a safety. Dynatherms are connected. I don't know what Ryan and I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I don't have any idea.
Of course, it's a loaded question.
Ha ha.
I got all the peoples. We're going.
Okay.
Bye, Vinny.
Why don't you gonna shut? Okay. Let's say you're going the wrong way to shut the door. All right, you go on.
Why?
With whatever's next. I don't know. You go on.
Panic.
What do you
Go.
I don't, where are we at now? I don't know.
All I've done is advantage, disadvantage of single action only.
You know what I really like about a striker fire gun? That I can prep the trigger. Can you really prep a single action gun? I mean, I guess you can a little bit.
I mean, you can get to a wall. I mean, it depends on the trigger. You can still get to a wall.
Double action guns are not quite so preppable. They don't really exist much anymore.
Yeah.
But
I don't know about this. Like, if you could.
in the good old days with the revolvers, you could kind of prep it, set it up.
I mean, if you know the trigger well enough. Ooh, I went right through it that time. You know, if you know the trigger well enough, you could stage it. But I don't know.
What would you say the average weight would be on a striker fire gun?
I mean, I'd say somewhere between 5 and 6 pounds. I don't know. It depends on the gun.
So, double action, single action, DASAs. The action type that has the long, heavy trigger pull is the first trigger pull, and then the subsequent ones are nice and light. Sounds perfect, right? It's like, well, you get your gun out, and you're not necessarily ready to fire the gun, and you have that long trigger pull to keep you from accidentally firing the gun. And then after that, you get the nice light trigger pull. The downsides, You got to learn two trigger pulls.
Yeah, you have two different feels of the trigger. If you want to really understand your gun, you need to intimately know both trigger pulls. They feel completely different. How many times have you seen somebody shoot, like a newer shooter shooting a DASA gun and have a second shot ND?
They don't
Bang,
even
bang.
I was actually going with the very first shot doesn't hit the paper,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
doesn't come close to it being accurate.
They
with
start pulling, and man, it starts
moving.
Yeah, the whole. You definitely see that.
Or just nobody wants to train with that long, heavy trigger pull. When you first load a DASA, unless you physically decock it. So, I loaded my gun. I racked my racked my slide. My hammer's back.
And that's how people typically
yeah,
shoot it.
almost rarely do I see shooters actually decock it and put it in double action mode to practice with the double action. I think it's really important that you do, because first off, that's if you did have to use the gun defensively, that's your first shot. And
it's also super important that if you put a gun in a holster, a DASA gun in a holster,
oh my gosh, yes,
you have to decock the gun.
Yeah,
You have to. That's the way the gun's designed to be carried, not with the hammer back. A gun like this, single action only, is designed to be carried with the hammer back.
I feel like I
Safety
saw
on.
a DASA gun recently that had a safety that you can apply while it was in single action.
There are some weird ones
Okay.
like
But
that.
That's typically not an option.
Yeah.
Typically, if you have a DASA and you chamber around and it's in single action.
Charles! Good morning.
Jesus. Typically, in order to put a safety on, some of them come with safety, some of them don't, but as you put the safety on, it's usually the same as the decocking lever, which allows the hammer to drop forward. But lightening the trigger in a double action. So Lou says, just lighten the trigger pull a bit on a double action. There's a whole lot more to just the weight of the trigger pull, but the length of the trigger pull is also important. And I've seen people that have lightened up their double actions, and it's almost deceiving. While it is nice and smooth, I think smooth is the bigger aspect of it, but it's still very long. And that's where all the flinching happens. Your whole hand tightens up. While it being heavier is definitely going to amplify that, it's still going to cause the hand to tighten up even more and send that shot low left almost inevitably. So if you have a DASA gun, don't rely on that long, heavy trigger pull to treat the gun negligently, for sure, and be casual with your finger on the trigger. Doesn't matter if you have a safety on your gun, doesn't matter how heavy your trigger is, you need to keep that trigger finger off of the trigger until you have actually made the intention to fire. And then practice with your double action trigger all the time. Every time you shoot the gun, you get the gun out, you load it, you chamber it, decock it. Every single time, your first shot should be double action, so you know how to run your gun. And in every condition, if you shoot competitively, if you shoot a DASA, you're gonna have to decock it before you put it in your holster. If you're law enforcement, you're gonna have to decock it before you put it in your holster. If you're a concealed carrier, please, for the love of God,
my
decock
goodness.
your gun before you put it in your holster.
One of the things I was just going to say is that when we do holster quals here, so if you're a member, you can get qualified to draw from a holster. When you come in just to shoot for regular shooting. And the amount of times that people question me, like, wait, I have to decock it before I put the gun away? Yes, because one of the rules is that if your gun is equipped with safeties or decockers, it must be utilized before the gun goes in a holster. If your gun is a striker-fired gun, one of the advantages of striker-fired guns, bless you, is that you do not have to have a manual safety on it. Some of them come with them. Part of our rules is you have to, if it has a safety on it, you have to use it. And that's good for you, so you get used to the manipulation. It scares the crap out of me how many times I've had people like, wait, why? Why do I need to? But the trigger's easier to pull.
Or what is that thing?
No shit.
Yeah.
You need to use the decock. If you're putting a gun away, the hammer has to be forward. On a DASA gun. If it's a single action only, no. Don't. This is on topic but off topic. Load your gun, insert your magazine, drop your slide, grab a hold of the hammer.
Oh, gosh.
This is on a single action only gun.
Oh, dear.
And lower the hammer and then put the gun away, because that's safer. That is
No. No.
100% not safer. First of all, you're playing a dangerous game of lowering that hammer on a live round because you have to pull the trigger to do it. Secondly, this gun's useless. You either have to rack the slide or manually cock the hammer, and people think that makes it safer to carry because this isn't safe.
But that's what they do in the movies.
Single action only. If you carry a single action only gun, no problem with that whatsoever. You can absolutely do that. This is how the gun's designed to be carried.
Cocked and locked.
Hammer back, safety on. Carry it that way. Do not take the safety off, pull the trigger, and manually try to lower that hammer down and then put it in your holster. That's not a smart move.
No. It's bad.
So,
Single action.
advantage of a DASA gun.
I don't know. I have a hard time justifying that long, heavy trigger pull at first. Like, you know, it's supposed to give you a little bit more wiggle room with the amount of pressure you apply to your trigger. And
Because of, and so why is that?
I think this is my best guess based off of logic and what I know of guns and law enforcement. I think that they were mostly designed for law enforcement to have that less likely discharge while they have someone at gunpoint for compliance. And again, that's my best guess. I have not researched that. That's just my best guess. And I still...
Because you're under stress and you may not... So one of the arguments for it is that it takes more pressure. You have to have made an absolute conscious decision to pull the trigger all the way backwards. You don't have as much of a chance of a clinched, oh shit, and the gun going off. Can it still happen? Sure.
Same reason why they couldn't do it with revolvers. Like you're not supposed to cock your hammer with revolvers because it lightens the trigger too much and it makes it more volatile.
Advantage to the DASAs doesn't require manual safety. I don't like manual safeties on defensive handguns, so to me that's an advantage. The disadvantage is you have two different trigger pulls, and depending on the gun, they could be way different.
Sure.
And it's not my favorite action type. I own one, but I don't hardly ever shoot it.
And the first trigger pull is the more difficult one.
Yeah, and that's the most important one.
Yeah.
That's the most important one, defensively speaking, and competitively speaking. You're throwing rounds for the sake of throwing rounds. That's not a good thing.
I heard from an officer one time that he would have his guys, he would catch them shooting their first round underneath the target.
On purpose?
Yeah, because they knew they weren't going to get an accurate shot. I'm like, oh.
Boy, oh boy.
I haven't seen an application, but I have heard that. So we'll talk more about striker fire.
So what's an advantage of a striker fire gun for concealed carry? Or for duty use, whatever.
I mean, it's an in-between. It has the length-ish of a double action, but it allows you to really kind of prep through half of that trigger, in most cases, depending on the gun. And then you have about a middle-of-the-road weight, so about 5.5 to 6 pounds or so. Well, I think a Glock trigger standard is 5.5 pounds. So it's pretty average. It's in the middle. It's not super light. You don't have to have a manual safety on it, like with a single-action gun. You don't have the long, heavy trigger pull that you have to manage the way that the gun is pointed as much. But it's a crisp break. It has the benefits of both worlds. So it has the length of a double action, but without the weight, but you can take out half of it easily and prep it and then run it with just, half of that trigger at a time. And without all the weight.
What's a disadvantage of it?
They can get they're not always they're not as crisp as a single action gun. They don't have that nice clean break sometimes. There's definitely some nice striker fire guns. Like the Walther PDP has a fantastic trigger.
So this is something that I would say as a negative for it that is a positive for the double action only or the DASA is second strike capabilities.
Oh yeah.
Which
I don't know. I don't want to.
With modern ammo, I don't think that's a huge deal. Here's the only reason why I even mention it is because for most people who are not going to seek out training, if their gun goes click, they're going to try to pull the trigger again and again and again.
Yeah.
And it is possible that with a typical striker fired gun, you pull the trigger and the gun goes click, and you do this a couple times, obviously nothing's going to happen. If you have a double action only or a DASA, you pull the trigger and it goes click, it is possible that when you pull it the second time, the gun could go bang. All right?
Slim to none.
Oh, yeah.
Because especially if you're carrying jacketed hollow points, because that ammo is held to a much higher standard.
Yeah.
But
So and it's really only because of the untrained, because people who don't look for more training to understand it. When a gun goes click, there's an immediate action you're supposed to take to try to fix it, not just sit there and keep pulling the trigger. This is one example that I give of why you don't carry with an empty chamber. Was because of well, not just because of this, but there's an example of this. Video was online 100 years ago. This example is probably from 10, 15 years ago. Father and a son in a convenience store or a jewelry store being held up at gunpoint. Dad gives bad guy a wad of cash, right? Dad's got a gun in his face, right? Bad guy's pointing the gun at dad's face. Dad takes the cash, drops it on the counter. When the bad guy looks at the cash, Dad grabs a gun from underneath the counter, pulls the trigger 3 times. But the gun was empty. He had a magazine in it, no round in the chamber, and he was known for saying that it wasn't safe to have the round in the chamber. He could just rack the slide. In the moment, he didn't think about it. I'm sure he never practiced it. He pulled the gun up, and you can see his finger go click, click, click. Nothing happened, and the bad guy shot and killed both him and his son. That's just one example of why you need to have a round in the chamber. At any rate, that is a slight disadvantage to the striker fired gun, because we understand that most people don't seek out training, which
I agree.
is the wrong answer.
So Paul says, I had a platoon sergeant tell me to shoot the first round in the dirt of 9 qual. That irritated the heck out of me. That's why I practice DA a lot. Yeah, that's exactly okay. So my
it's
story I heard was not untrue.
That's not a one person, one time thing. That's insanity.
It's terrible. That's terrible. No, that's bad. So I think that if you're going to come to the store.
So real quick, Ryan says, to be honest, I've never felt a noticeable difference between triggers when actually shooting through a course of fire. So
you should. I think the world of guns will open up for you a lot more if you dive into that a little bit.
So I can see both sides of that as well. Ryan shoots a lot.
Yeah.
So
competitively too.
It's a known thing. Like you've done it a bunch of times. So if you don't notice a difference in first round versus second round hits, that's good. You've absolutely mastered, that trigger pull and understanding your gun. Most people, and saying most people, don't put enough trigger time into the gun to understand that, to be able to make a good first round hit with that long, heavy trigger pull.
But overthink the triggers a little bit. I think that you might find it fascinating. I love overthinking things. What time
No
is
kidding. 8:16.
Okay, we're good on time.
Okay.
What was the other thing? Dang it. I don't remember what I was going to say.
Any advantages did we do double action only? Any advantages to double action only?
I mean, it could be similar to the DASA, except for you don't get the subsequent single action rounds, but you do have that longer, heavier trigger pull all the time.
That's the same all the time.
Yeah. One thing that, good morning, Jack. Or Jackie, I'm sorry, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
The one good thing that I have found about a DA gun is the ability to practice my trigger pull, because I learned on a revolver and I was learning in double action, so I got really good at managing, the gun through that long, heavy trigger, and it built up my ability to just understand how to press the trigger. So I learned from that, and I learned a lot of ways to teach people how to manage a trigger as well. So that was really beneficial for me.
So I'd say an advantage to the double action is that it doesn't require manual safety. Obviously, you can get them with it. To me, that's silly. I don't understand. I really have no idea why this gun has got a manual safety on it. It has a very long, very heavy trigger pull. It does not need, in my opinion, a manual safety. This one has got a terrible manual safety. It is teeny tiny. I have the dexterity and the strength in my thumb to push the safety down to turn the gun on.
I'll try.
I can't do it, turn the gun off, but that's okay. You don't need to be fast to be able to do that. She cannot.
Bitch fingers. Got it.
Bitch. Girl.
But definitely when it's out here, I can't.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. Does not need to have it. Could you?
And it bothers me when safeties block the slide.
Yeah, from moving.
Yes, it's just
not a good gun, my opinion. But that's just me. Disadvantage to the double action only is that you have a long, heavy trigger pull every single time you pull the trigger. Now, on this particular gun, that long, heavy trigger pull makes a much bigger difference in the movement of the gun because the grip is so small. It's so hard to get a good grip on the gun. When you have something like your P250, a full-size handgun, something this size, but has a long, heavy trigger pull, it's much easier to keep control of the gun.
Oh,
right?
Something else that I've noticed when I have students that want to shoot a little baby revolver, or any of these little bitty double action only, is because of the weight of the trigger, you have a tendency to put more finger in there for leverage, because it's hard to manage the trigger all the way back for newer shooters and their hands just not getting used to how to pull the trigger under control yet. But so you put more finger in there to get more leverage on it, but then you run out of space on the other side. I'm gonna turn the gun this way.
Sure.
You run out of space on the other side, so your finger runs into your other fingers, and you can't get it all the way back. Jeez, there it goes. I mean, I see that all the time. So it's not only that you have to manage the muzzle as you're pressing the trigger to keep it on target, but you run out of space to pull the trigger. So,
Ryan, that's kind of interesting the way he says that. It's more than likely there to sell someone, I'm assuming talking about the safety, it's more than likely there to sell someone on peace of mind rather than having their peace in mind.
That's awesome.
I like that. And that's 100% true. Because how many times do we hear newer students, customers say, I'm looking for a gun for self-defense. I don't really know what I want. It just needs to have a safety on it. Why does it need to have a safety on it? Well, I have little kids at home. Can your kids operate a light switch? I bet your kids understand how to unlock your phone and do more things on your phone than you do. They're way smart enough to push a little button up. They might not be strong enough. Or down. Okay? If you buy a handgun with a manual safety because you want the gun to be safe from other people getting a hold of it and hurting themselves, you're thinking about it incorrectly. If you decide for your own reasons that you want a manual safety, that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just it does not make the gun any safer to just leave it around, to set it. Well, now I can set it on my nightstand and I don't have to worry about one of my kids getting a hold of it. That's not true. And that's what a lot of people think a safety's for.
Yeah, bad.
So that's not a great way to think about it. We see people a lot in our defensive handgun 1 course, which is our entry level into our upper level classes. So we start pushing you a little bit faster. And when they have manual safeties on their gun, we see people missing them all the time and trying to pull the trigger. And it's great because you'll see the flinch. You'll see them try to pull the trigger and nothing happens. And then they'll look at it for a second, click, bang.
And in order to put your gun in a holster here, you got to use your safety.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I don't ever use my safety. It's just on the gun. That's a bad mindset to have.
Yes. Now, if it's on a striker fire gun like M&P, you can get with or without a manual safety. Is it safe to holster the gun with the safety turned off? Mm-hmm. Yes,
as long
absolutely.
As you holster it safely.
Yeah, as long as you holster it safely. It is, because the gun is designed to be used without a safety. It's just they put one in because people want that peace of mind. It's a bad habit, though, because if you accidentally turn the safety on when you don't expect it, you don't have the muscle memory of turning it off. It should be automatic. When the gun's on target, the safety's turned off. When the gun's off target, the safety's turned on. On target, guns on. Off target, guns off. However you want to think about it.
Time is it?
Time for you to get a watch. Where's your watch?
I left it in the car. I used to.
It's 8:23.
Okay.
Is that about it?
I think I didn't finish my thought earlier about, the most common one you're going to run into is a striker fire. There's a reason why they're becoming so popular, is because you get a lot of variants. You can, there's just so many aspects of them that make them nice. It's hard to describe because they're very much in the middle. But there is, if you pick up a Glock versus you pick up the Walther PDP, you're going to see a significant difference there. So when you buy a gun, shoot them and pay attention to how the trigger feels, because that is important. And it's, in my opinion, it's one of the last things I would prefer to modify on my gun. On a carry gun? Yeah, that's... Yeah. So I don't like modifying triggers on carry guns.
We've seen some issues with modified triggers. Here's why I think most people don't realize the triggers feel different, is because when they get ready to shoot the gun, right? Maybe they've got great, trigger finger discipline. They get everything ready to go, get everything lined up. They say, okay, I want to shoot now. And they just yank on it. Okay? Gun goes bang. Gun goes bang. And they do it again. And then they do it again. And they do it again. So they don't actually feel the trigger. They're not really running the gun. They're just slapping at the trigger. And until you understand how the trigger works and how to prep it and press through and feel those different stages of a trigger, you might not be able to tell the difference between a nice-ish striker fired trigger and a very gritty, grimy, like a lot of the older M&Ps previous to the last year or two, their triggers, we jokingly call them the 80 grit trigger, because it felt like you were rubbing the trigger on sandpaper. And almost everybody who buys an M&P pistol would immediately change out the trigger for an Apex. Almost immediately, because their triggers were garbage. They've gotten better. But a lot of people who don't shoot their gun a lot or don't understand how the trigger functions just rip on it and don't ever feel it. So, and it's I had somebody in a defensive handgun one class 3 weeks ago or something that I was teaching. When I showed him the trigger prep and press, he was like, dude, that's like a freaking cheat code for shooting. Awesome. And he went from shooting a relatively big group to a much smaller group real quickly just on that. And there's a lot more to it than just a trigger. But being able to press the trigger straight back without moving the gun around is hugely important to good accuracy.
Just to know your gun well enough to put your finger on the trigger and know it's not going to go bang. Because, I mean, it takes a while for shooters to realize that they can touch the trigger and it's not going to fire. To know, and now
which is good. Yeah, it's good for the
training aspect of it. That's not something you would apply in the real world, but to know that you're in control of this guy. That's what you have to learn as a shooter, is to be in control of your trigger finger. And when all you can do is just move it to the trigger and press it right away, that is not in control of this. When you are a super fast, high-level competition shooter, but you have a hard time making your finger do what you want it to go slow and take those good, precise shots, like, I want you to learn how to use this. And if you can understand your trigger and get to know it, that helps substantially. So.
All right.
That's it.
Anything else? You want to go away?
I'm going to go get my neck cracked.
Okay. All right, so that about does it for us for today. So if you guys need something, come see us, 14803 Manchester Road in beautiful Bowman, Missouri. It is freaking cold outside. You gotta wait. You just
But
wait.
look, I'm on the other side, and it's not even awkward because we have all this space.
It is awkward because I wanted to go for my coffee a few times, but then I have to. Anyway, it's super nasty cold outside. It's warm in here, and you can come hang out and shoot guns and buy stuff and all those things. And look at the differences between double action only, single action only, DASA, and striker fire, all in one place.
Woo!
It's amazing.
Come shoot them.
Yes, come check them out. 10 to 8, Monday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 6, Sunday 10 to 6. You guys stay safe, be nice to one another.
We'll catch you soon. Awkward pause. Toodles. I can't do that with my